Welcome to a fresh and captivating look at one of the most iconic films of the 1990s, Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction. In the landscape of modern cinema, few movies have ever managed to ignite discussion, controversy, and fascination quite like this unforgettable crime drama. It's the film that turned indie storytelling on its head, revitalized careers, and sparked endless debates about briefcases, foot fetishes, and killer dialogue. Whether you're a dedicated Tarantino aficionado or just someone looking for a thrilling deep dive into movie lore, these tidbits will reveal how Pulp Fiction morphed into a cinematic staple with a legacy that still resonates today. So, settle in, let your curiosity roam free, and get ready for a whirlwind exploration of 30 little-known facts about Pulp Fiction, 1994. Let's jump right in. Inspired by pulp magazines. Although it's widely recognized that Pulp Fiction takes its name from the cheap pulp magazines of the early to mid-20th century, many people underestimate just how strongly these gritty publications influenced the movie's style and structure. Tarantino deliberately mirrored the raw crime stories and serialized adventures found in those magazines. Instead of presenting a single linear narrative, he broke his film into multiple interconnected segments. This anthology-like approach tapped into the spirit of those old magazines that sold lurid tales and outlandish plots for mere pennies. By embracing that unconventional structure, Tarantino gave audiences a distinctive, almost retro feel that also felt fresh and contemporary. This nod to the past laid the groundwork for the film's non-linear timeline, which became one of its most talked-about features. In many ways, Pulp Fiction pays homage to an era when cheap paper and bold covers enticed readers into seedy underworlds, framing a story that leaps through time while keeping viewers completely hooked. Tarantino's breakthrough. Back in 1992, Tarantino made a name for himself with Reservoir Dogs, but it was Pulp Fiction that catapulted him into the stratosphere of auteur directors. By the time he began promoting his second film, he was a mere 31 years old, young for a filmmaker commanding such intense buzz. Studios initially weren't sure how to handle him. His raw dialogue, explicit violence, and frenetic pacing didn't fit neatly into the Hollywood formulas of the era. Yet, once Pulp Fiction hit the festival circuit, Tarantino's rising star power became undeniable. Journalists lauded him as a cinematic rebel, and aspiring filmmakers idolized him for daring to combine humor with brutality, philosophical debates with pop culture references, and carefully choreographed violence with moments of quiet introspection. His brash style revolutionized the 1990s indie scene, laying the foundation for other boundary-pushing directors to step forward. He became not just a director, but a brand, a name that promised a truly unique experience at the cinema. Low-budget success. Contrary to its stylish production values and star-studded cast, Pulp Fiction was made on a shoestring budget of around $8 to $8.5 million. Compared to Hollywood blockbusters of the period, that sum was pennies on the dollar. Tarantino and his producers were forced to be incredibly resourceful, shooting on practical sets and limiting extravagant location shoots. They relied heavily on the passion of the cast and crew, who believed they were working on something that could break the mold. Their gamble paid off beyond anyone's wildest dreams. The film grossed more than $213 million worldwide. That windfall effectively turned Pulp Fiction into the first independent movie to shatter the $200 million mark, a feat that changed industry perceptions about the commercial viability of indie films. Moviegoers flocked to see what all the hype was about, and the word-of-mouth phenomenon spread like wildfire. To this day, it remains a spectacular case study in how a unique vision paired with determined producers can yield massive returns, even without a big studio bankrolling every aspect of production. Cannes Palme d'Or. When Pulp Fiction arrived at the 1994 Cannes Film Festival, its raw energy and in-your-face storytelling style were unlike anything else in the competition. Up against heavy hitters like Forrest Gump and The Shawshank Redemption, Tarantino's film generated plenty of buzz as well as some heated controversy. It was violent, unapologetically profane, and weirdly hilarious in a way that Cannes audiences hadn't quite experienced. Nobody expected it to take home the festival's highest honor, the Palme d'Or, because it was such a far cry from the usual art house fare Cannes often rewards. But in a bold move, the jury selected Pulp Fiction, shocking the cinematic world and fueling debates over whether a violent, pop culture-laden crime film was deserving of such a prestigious accolade. This surprising victory effectively confirmed that Tarantino's offbeat style had a place among more traditional art films, bridging a gap between big-name festivals and a new generation of edgy, iconoclastic filmmakers. Daniel Day-Lewis wanted Vincent. One of the more intriguing behind-the-scenes tidbits is that the legendary Daniel Day-Lewis was reportedly clamoring to play Vincent Vega. While Day-Lewis is primarily known for his immersion into roles like Christy Brown in My Left Foot or Abraham Lincoln in Lincoln, the prospect of him transforming into a laid-back hitman remains an amazing what-if scenario in film history. Ultimately, the part went to John Travolta, but the notion of Day-Lewis potentially adopting Vincent's languid speech and comedic drug-induced mishaps is fodder for cinephiles who love to imagine alternate castings. Whether Tarantino was tempted by the idea of Day-Lewis's chameleon-like approach remains unconfirmed. However, rumor has it that Tarantino was determined to cast Travolta after an impressive audition, and Michael Madsen's decision to pass on the role. The fact that Day-Lewis, already an Oscar winner, even pursued the part underscores the intense aura surrounding Tarantino's script before shooting even began. John Travolta's comeback. By the early 1990s, John Travolta was not exactly the toast of Hollywood. His star had dimmed considerably since the glory days of Saturday Night Fever and Grease. Then Michael Madsen stepped away from playing Vincent Vega, and Tarantino seized the opportunity to recruit Travolta. Despite resistance from some producers who worried Travolta's career slump would hurt the film, Tarantino stood firmly by his choice. The gamble worked brilliantly. Travolta delivered a nuanced, charismatic performance that balanced comedic timing with a hint of pathos. Critics and audiences alike were entranced by his sly, off-kilter approach to Vincent. His efforts earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor, effectively relaunching his career and sparking a string of new roles. It was a turnaround that few saw coming, proving once again that Tarantino had an uncanny knack for spotting potential in performers who'd been written off by mainstream Hollywood. Samuel L. Jackson's audition fight. The role of Jules Winfield, the philosophical hitman with a righteous fury, almost slipped through Samuel L. Jackson's fingers. In an odd twist, actor Paul Calderon wowed Tarantino during an audition, putting Jackson's front-runner status in doubt. Learning that his role was not a sure thing, Jackson arrived for a second audition in a simmering rage, reportedly fueled by an actual cheeseburger he'd brought along. His ferocious reading of Jules's lines left no doubt that he was the perfect fit. Jackson's portrayal became legendary for its intensity, humor, and biblical vengeance, culminating in lines delivered so powerfully that they're still quoted decades later. This story of near-miss casting is a testament to how determination and a bit of real-life anger can sometimes shape the tone of a character. Looking back, it's almost unimaginable that anyone else could have played Jules and delivered the iconic Ezekiel 25:17 speech with such thunderous conviction. Uma Thurman's reluctance. Though Uma Thurman now seems inseparable from Mia Wallace, the actress initially hesitated to take on the part. The script's violence, frenetic energy, and drug content gave her pause, and she wasn't entirely convinced that Pulp Fiction would serve her career well. Tarantino, convinced that Thurman was the only actress who could embody Mia's sultry yet vulnerable aura, persisted. Legend has it he read the script to her over the phone and invited her to dinner, where he passionately pitched the concept and her role in it. Eventually, Thurman agreed, and her portrayal of Mia, complete with that iconic black bob and mesmerizing dance moves, was an absolute revelation. She became the film's primary female face, paving the way for a long collaborative relationship with Tarantino that would extend to other films like Kill Bill. Her initial reluctance to play Mia only adds intrigue to the finished product, where Thurman's seemingly effortless performance became essential to the film's enduring appeal. Bruce Willis's pay cut. During the early 1990s, Bruce Willis was at the height of his action hero fame, thanks to the Die Hard series and other blockbuster roles. So it might surprise fans to learn that he accepted a significant pay cut to portray Butch Coolidge, the boxer entangled in a fateful double cross. Rather than demanding his usual hefty salary, Willis took on the part for scale, plus a percentage of the film's back-end profits. He believed firmly in Tarantino's artistic vision and clearly recognized the potential for the film to cause a seismic shift in cinema. Although money was always a factor in Hollywood decisions, this was a case where a major star's faith in a unique script overrode typical financial arrangements. By opting for a smaller initial paycheck, Willis positioned himself as both an A-lister and a risk-taking collaborator, and in the end, everyone benefited from Pulp Fiction's astounding commercial success. No heroin in overdose scene. Originally, Mia Wallace's overdose scene was planned around cocaine, with Tarantino noting that cocaine was a more common drug for glamorous characters in the LA underworld to use recreationally. However, Tarantino soon realized that to raise the stakes and cast a darker shadow over the narrative, heroin would pack a heavier punch and complicate Vincent's job of babysitting the boss's wife. So the script evolved, swapping coke for heroin to intensify the tension. Of course, the actual filming of Mia's overdose did not involve any real narcotics. The scene's final effect was achieved using props, reverse motion for the adrenaline shot, and Uma Thurman's convincingly harrowing performance. This change highlighted how quickly a fun night of dancing and casual partying could veer off into a life-threatening crisis, further underlining Tarantino's penchant for blending dark comedy with gut-wrenching drama. Travolta's dance training. John Travolta's well-documented dance prowess might have made the twist contest at Jack Rabbit Slim's seem like a breeze, but behind the scenes, it required careful choreography to match Tarantino's eclectic vision. The director wanted a twist on the classic 1960s dance craze, a moment that felt both nostalgic and wryly humorous. Travolta, who'd previously soared to fame as Tony Manero in Saturday Night Fever, was no stranger to dancing on camera, yet he approached this sequence with a deliberate coolness. Rather than flashy disco moves, he channeled a laid-back vibe reminiscent of 1960s dance scenes that Tarantino adored. Uma Thurman, less of a seasoned dancer, trained diligently to keep pace. Together, they exuded a playful, mesmerizing chemistry that turned the scene into an instant pop culture moment. Indeed, the arch of Travolta's hand, the pointed toes, and the amusingly uninhibited shaking captured Pulp Fiction's ability to combine old-school homage with irreverent flair. Real syringe in drug scene. If you look closely when Vincent Vega prepares his heroin, you might catch a glimpse of extraordinary authenticity. Travolta used a real syringe barrel, sans needle, to simulate the process as accurately as possible. Additionally, he consulted with a former heroin addict who walked him through the meticulous steps of heating the spoon, loading the syringe, and injecting the drug. While the actual substances were, of course, fakes, The scene benefited from that real-world expertise, adding a jarring level of realism to Vincent's casual routine of shooting up. In a film that blends so many surreal elements and comedic moments, these small details anchored the story in a disturbing authenticity, reminding viewers that its characters inhabit a dangerous underworld where comedic banter and lethal drugs mingle in the same breath. Tarantino's Jimmy cameo. Quentin Tarantino is known for inserting himself into his films, sometimes briefly and sometimes more prominently. In Pulp Fiction, he appears as Jimmy Dimmick, a bathrobe-wearing suburbanite who utters some of the film's most shockingly profane lines. Interestingly, Tarantino considered other actors, including Steve Buscemi, for the role. However, Buscemi ended up playing a cameo as a snarky waiter later on, so Tarantino seized the chance to expand Jimmy's part. The director famously wore his own bathrobe for the shoot, further blurring lines between his personal style and the casual irreverence of the film. Though his performance garnered mixed reviews, with some critics questioning whether Tarantino should stick to directing, it remains one of his most notable cameos, largely because his character sets off the chain of events that leads to the wolf's intervention. Jimmy's exasperated meltdown about cleaning up a crime scene in his house is both comedic and tense, capturing the bizarre, everyday crises that define the film. Mr. Blonde connection. In the Tarantino universe, connections between different films often crop up, weaving a tapestry that fans love to unravel. One such thread is that Vincent Vega is the brother of Vic Vega, otherwise known as Mr. Blonde from Reservoir Dogs. Though this sibling relationship never becomes a focal point in Pulp Fiction, it served as a spark for Tarantino's never-realized idea, the Vega Brothers prequel. According to Tarantino, the concept revolved around the misadventures of Vincent and Vic in earlier times, presumably before they each met their violent ends. While talk of that film persisted for years, with fans eagerly envisioning John Travolta and Michael Madsen returning to play younger versions of their characters, the project never came to fruition. Nevertheless, the mere possibility of that tie-in continues to fuel fan theories about how Tarantino's cinematic realm might tie together more neatly than meets the eye. Biblical quote. Invention. Jules Winfield's Ezekiel 25:17 speech is one of the most electrifying monologues in cinema, but it's only partly derived from the actual Old Testament passage. Much of the quote was invented or adapted by Tarantino, who drew inspiration from samurai films, particularly Sonny Chiba's Bodyguard, 1973. This cinematic flourish turns the speech into a quasi-biblical prophecy of vengeance, morality, and redemption. Samuel L. Jackson's explosive delivery of those lines became a hallmark of his performance, catching the audience off guard with its religious overtone. Ironically, Jules himself admits that he's never been fully sure of what the passage means. By the film's finale, however, he uses it to articulate his unexpected quest for personal redemption. The manipulated scripture has since become a pop culture staple, quoted and parodied countless times, a testament to Tarantino's knack for elevating an invented verse into something powerfully iconic. Jack Rabbit Slim's set. In an era when filming on location was often cheaper, Tarantino chose to build the entire Jack Rabbit Slim's set from scratch inside a Culver City warehouse. This 1950s-themed diner, complete with faux celebrity lookalikes and retro booths, cost around $150,000, a sizable chunk of the budget. Tarantino was determined to capture a dreamlike, slightly surreal atmosphere, so he rejected any real-life diner that might have served as a stand-in. The result is a hyper-stylized environment that calls attention to itself in a delightful way. It's a place where Marilyn Monroe might serve you milkshakes and the spirit of Elvis might be lurking in the corners. That set quickly became a highlight of the film, housing the famous twist dance contest and giving Mia and Vincent's storyline an electric, retro-infused stage. Even decades later, fans wistfully wonder if Jack Rabbit Slim's is a real place they can visit. Harvey Keitel's role. Harvey Keitel was instrumental in getting Reservoir Dogs made, reportedly helping finance Tarantino's debut feature. In Pulp Fiction, he appears as Winston Wolfe, a calm, debonair fixer who swoops in at the crack of dawn to solve Jules and Vincent's corpse-in-the-car dilemma. Although his screen time is relatively brief, the character's swagger and efficiency stand out, showcasing Keitel's ability to dominate a scene. Famously, his portion of filming was completed in just 2 days, wrapping around 7 a.m. after intensive night shoots. His presence added extra gravitas to the production, reassuring the cast and crew that an actor of his stature believed in Tarantino's script. Indeed, whenever Winston Wolfe emerges to handle the messy aftermath, audiences are reminded that Pulp Fiction never lingers in chaos for long. In Tarantino's world, even the most gory complications can be swiftly fixed with the right manpower and a few trash bags. No on-screen deaths. In a film often cited for its violence, viewers may be surprised to discover that the majority of fatalities actually occur off-screen or are implied rather than graphically shown. Brett is killed abruptly during the infamous apartment scene, but we only glimpse the tail end of the gunfire. Marvin's death in the car is a comedic spurt of gore, yet it's over in a flash. The tension lies mostly in the threat of violence, Mia's overdose, the intense standoffs, the trunk searches, rather than long, explicit depictions of bloodshed. This deliberate approach underscores Tarantino's ability to craft suspense and shock without always resorting to drawn-out brutality. He lets the audience's imagination fill in the details, demonstrating that the mere suggestion of a horrific act can sometimes have more impact than showing every gruesome second. The film's reputation for violence, while not unwarranted, is partially shaped by how effectively Tarantino wields off-screen mayhem to keep viewers perpetually on edge. GIMP scene. Inspiration. One of the film's most disturbing sequences unfolds in the basement of the pawn shop, where Butch and Marcellus Wallace become entangled in a nightmarish scenario involving Zed, Maynard, and the Gimp. Tarantino has mentioned taking inspiration from Deliverance, 1972, and real-life crime stories that revolve around shockingly depraved acts committed in seemingly mundane rural locales. By choosing to keep the most appalling parts off-screen, Tarantino follows the same approach he used with other violent acts in the film, implying unimaginable horrors that the camera mercifully doesn't dwell on. The unnerving result is a scene that unsettles the audience without needing gratuitous detail. The Gimp's presence, strapped into leather fetish gear and treated like subhuman property, intensifies the sense of moral and physical danger. This scenario reveals Tarantino's ability to push boundaries, as he fully intended to jolt viewers with an unexpected turn that no one could see coming. Miramax's Disney backing. In the early 1990s, Miramax was riding high on the indie wave, snapping up daring projects that traditional studios viewed as too risky. Yet, Miramax was owned by Disney, a family-friendly conglomerate with a squeaky clean public image. Unsurprisingly, Pulp Fiction caused tremors within Disney's corporate offices, given the movie's barrage of expletives, racial slurs, drug abuse, and graphic references. Questions arose. How would a media giant known for fairy tales justify distributing a violent, foul-mouthed crime flick? In an example of corporate tightrope walking, Disney allowed Miramax to proceed, likely recognizing the potential for critical and financial success. By letting Miramax maintain its edgy brand identity, Disney's top brass found a way to enjoy the profits without fully embracing the movie's content in its more wholesome sectors. This uneasy partnership is a reminder of Hollywood's complexities, where the lines between commercial risk and artistic ambition are constantly tested. 7 Oscar nominations. When award season rolled around, Pulp Fiction snagged 7 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Travolta, Best Supporting Actor, Jackson, and Best Supporting Actress, Thurman. While it ultimately won just one, Best Original Screenplay for Tarantino and co-writer Roger Avary, its presence in those top categories marked a watershed moment for indie films. A movie brimming with profanity, off-kilter humor, and extreme violence was suddenly in the same conversation as mainstream juggernauts. The Academy's acknowledgement validated the film's boundary-pushing style, suggesting that cinema's highest honors could go to works that defied tradition. Even though Forrest Gump took home Best Picture, many film enthusiasts still argue that Pulp Fiction was the more revolutionary achievement. Tarantino's acceptance speech for Best Original Screenplay further cemented him as the rebel king of Hollywood, launching a decade in which major studios became more open to audacious, unconventional storytelling. Roger Avary's contribution. Though Tarantino is typically credited for the script's singular voice, Roger Avary played a crucial role, especially in shaping the Gold Watch sequence involving Butch. Avary drew inspiration from family stories of his grandfather's World War II exploits, transforming them into the monologue Christopher Walken famously delivers about the watch's very peculiar journey. Avary's involvement meant that the film's overall tone benefited from an additional perspective, blending Tarantino's pop culture mania with Avary's somewhat more classical story instincts. Yet the partnership wasn't without friction. After the film's success, questions about who wrote what led to an arbitration process resulting in Avary getting co-writing credit. Despite any backstage tension, the synergy between their ideas is part of what gives Pulp Fiction its eclectic rhythm. Avary's input ensured there was room for quieter emotional underpinnings amidst the barrage of witty banter and sudden violence. Red Apple cigarettes. Eagle-eyed viewers who follow Tarantino's filmography will notice that fictional brand placement is a running gag. Pulp Fiction prominently features Red Apple cigarettes, a made-up label that surfaces in multiple Tarantino films, including Kill Bill and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This brand building across different stories helps establish the so-called Tarantino-verse, reinforcing the sensation that all these characters, hitmen, samurai brides, vengeful stuntmen, live in a shared realm that plays by its own rules. The brand's repeated presence is more than a simple Easter egg. It's a fun creative device that ties Tarantino's various cinematic worlds together. Moreover, Red Apple cigarettes speak to Tarantino's reverence for old-school Hollywood quirks, particularly how classic directors often inserted fictional products in lieu of real advertising. For fans, spotting Red Apple packs is part of the joy of dissecting Tarantino's filmography, offering a small but consistent thread that stitches the tapestry of his storytelling. Big Kahuna Burger. Before Samuel L. Jackson utters the now iconic line, "This is a tasty burger," not many people realized that Big Kahuna Burger was another Tarantino-invented fast food chain. It first popped up in Reservoir Dogs, made cameo appearances in From Dusk Till Dawn, and has continued to show up as a wink to his fans. The chain's Hawaiian theme is never deeply explored, but the brand cameo is instantly recognizable if you're tuned in to Tarantino's trademark humor. For Jules Winfield, that burger sets the stage for one of the film's most memorable scenes, blending comedic tension with sudden bursts of violence. It's also an example of how Tarantino loves letting his characters engage in seemingly trivial chatter about everyday items before plunging them into life-altering conflicts. As with Red Apple cigarettes, the repeated presence of Big Kahuna Burger across Tarantino's films invites viewers to see these disparate plots as part of a larger, interlinked cosmos. Christopher Walken's watch scene. Christopher Walken appears in a single flashback-heavy scene, but it's arguably among the film's most intriguing moments. Playing Captain Coons, he delivers a surreal monologue to a young Butch about the family heirloom watch. Though the scene is essentially exposition, explaining the watch's sentimental value, it's Walken's unnerving intensity that makes it unforgettable. Legend states that he nailed the monologue in one continuous take, blending dark comedic undertones with a bizarre sincerity. The story about the watch's hidden location during a POW camp stint is both grotesque and strangely poignant, giving the watch an almost mythic aura. This segment sets the stakes for Butch's fierce loyalty to retrieving the watch later, even though it might mean risking his life. Walken's performance often leaves audiences both chuckling and unsettled, illustrating the fine line that Pulp Fiction walks between humor, absurdity, and raw tension. No music in dance scene. The iconic twist dance scene might look like a breezy jam session, but in actuality, John Travolta and Uma Thurman moved to silence. Chuck Berry's "You Never Can Tell" was added in post-production, meaning the actors had only a metronome or minimal prompts for timing on set. This approach can throw off even seasoned dancers, yet the duo managed to execute their carefree spins flawlessly. The absent music on set highlights the film's behind-the-scenes resourcefulness and Tarantino's method of creating a distinctive vibe that only coalesced fully in the editing room. It also exemplifies how film magic sometimes hinges on actors selling the emotion in real time, with the final cinematic effect finessed later. Watching them swirl under the flashing neon lights of Jack Rabbit Slims, you'd never guess they were effectively dancing in a vacuum, a testament to both their chemistry and Tarantino's careful planning. Briefcase mystery. Few objects in recent film history have generated as much speculation as the suitcase that glows golden when opened. It's deliberately left ambiguous, never concretely revealed. Fan theories range from stolen diamonds lifted from Reservoir Dogs to Marcellus Wallace's soul, fueled by the presence of a Band-Aid on the back of Wallace's neck. Tarantino and Roger Avary have publicly dismissed most theories, insisting it's a pure MacGuffin, an object whose role is to drive the plot without requiring explicit explanation. This creative choice amplifies the sense of mystique, letting each viewer interpret the gold glow however they wish. Some see it as a commentary on the pursuit of greed, while others interpret it as an otherworldly presence. Regardless of the specifics, the briefcase stands out as a testament to Pulp Fiction's capacity for igniting never-ending debate about the small details, underscoring how skillful storytelling can sometimes thrive on unresolved questions. Julia Sweeney's cut role. Comedian. Julia Sweeney filmed a brief cameo as a diner waitress, and although she shot her scenes, they ended up on the cutting room floor. Curiously, photographs of her role circulated in promotional materials, creating a minor stir among fans who later noticed she was nowhere in the actual movie. Sweeney's absence is far from the first time cameo appearances have been trimmed from final cuts, but it underscores how Tarantino honed Pulp Fiction to a razor's edge in post-production, sacrificing even recognizable faces if they didn't serve the overall narrative flow. For Sweeney, it was a near-miss chance to be part of a cultural landmark. For movie buffs, it adds another tidbit to the store of what could have been stories that swirl around the production. The final result remains so carefully balanced that viewers hardly notice the omission, demonstrating the tough decisions necessary to create a tight, seamless film. Tarantino's foot fetish. Observant viewers might pick up on the repeated focus on women's feet in Tarantino's movies. Pulp Fiction features Mia Wallace's bare feet in a memorable shot when she's preparing to snort drugs and later dancing at Jack Rabbit Slim's. Though some initially dismissed these shots as incidental, discussions about Tarantino's personal foot fetish have circulated for years, ultimately confirmed by the filmmaker's consistent foot cameos. Far from a mere quirk, Tarantino has transformed foot imagery into a signature flourish, weaving it into everything from Kill Bill to Inglourious Bastards. For some viewers, this foot-centric framing is a playful directorial hallmark. For others, it's an odd preoccupation. Regardless, it's become an inescapable part of the Tarantino brand, generating conversation, amusement, and a bit of eyebrow-raising along the way. Cultural impact on indies. With its striking blend of non-linear storytelling, ultra-cool dialogue, and offbeat humor, Pulp Fiction rewrote the rulebook for what indie cinema could achieve. Its success not only launched Tarantino's career into the filmmaking stratosphere, but also opened doors for similarly audacious works like Memento and The Usual Suspects. Suddenly, Hollywood execs looked more closely at unconventional scripts that might appeal to a new generation of moviegoers hungry for something different. The film's visceral pop culture references and free-flowing discussions about everyday topics, like how a quarter-pounder is called a Royale with cheese in Europe, resonated with audiences who craved authenticity over formula. This shift led to a wave of daring projects being greenlit, effectively democratizing film production and distribution for a period. By blurring the lines between art house cinema and mainstream entertainment, Pulp Fiction paved the way for dozens of innovative movies to carve their own distinctive paths. And there you have it, 30 fascinating tidbits that underscore the genius, serendipity, and sheer luck behind Pulp Fiction. From Tarantino's youthful confidence to unexpected casting twists, from cinematic homages to foot-centric camera shots, this film showcases a fierce dedication to originality that left audiences spellbound. Part of its staying power lies in how it blends gritty realism with surreal humor, darkness with levity, and non-stop tension with moments of strangely comforting banter. The interplay of sharply drawn characters, witty dialogue, and a puzzle-piece structure formed a blueprint that would influence countless filmmakers in the decades to come. Its cultural footprint can still be felt in memes, references, and tributes across countless platforms, making Pulp Fiction a living, breathing artifact of 1990s pop culture. Whether you're a die-hard fan who's memorized every line or a newcomer simply eager to see what the fuss is about, the film remains a singular experience, unapologetically violent, unapologetically hilarious, and unapologetically itself. In many ways, Pulp Fiction is more than a movie. It's a symbol of indie cinema's ability to shock, inspire, and shift the creative landscape forever.